Okay. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. A very warm welcome to you all from all of us. The global clinical decision support system market is expected to reach US dollars 1.8 billion by 2025 from an estimated US dollars 1.2 billion in 2020 at a compounded annual growth rate of about 9.1% during the forecast period. The key factors propelling the growth of this market are the implementation of government regulations and initiatives to promote the adoptions of HIT solutions, increasing adoption of CDSS-enabled EHRs, increasing number of collaborations and partnerships between stakeholders, growing incidence of medication errors, and the rising prominence of mHealth and big data tools. A lot of things is happening. However, the high investment requirements for the implementation of CDSS and lack of interoperability and data security concerns are expected to restrain the growth of this market in an unbridled fashion during the forecast period. COVID was an unfortunate incident, but due to the COVID-19 outbreak, medical practices of all sizes are under immense pressure as well as development, and healthcare facilities across the globe have been overwhelmed by the large number of patients visiting them on a daily basis. The emergence of this pandemic has driven the demand for accurate diagnosis, treatment, implementation devices in several countries across the globe. In this regard, clinical decision support systems have proven to be very helpful as they allow healthcare providers to monitor patients using digitally connected, non-invasive, non-touch devices such as home blood pressure monitor and pulse oximeters. Moreover, the rapid spread of this disease across the globe has resulted in a shortage of hospital beds and healthcare workers. Mind you, 216 countries were shut down during this pandemic, and that's why this requirement has been felt across the world. This has driven the demand for connected medical devices for vital data science monitoring. The COVID-19 pandemic has also increased the need for social distancing among physicians and patients, which has driven the demand for remote patient monitoring and telehealth solutions and the need for accurate and timely exchange of patient health records. Various players in this market have introduced COVID-19 associated features into their existing EHRs, which are being made available to users free of cost. Due to the growing patient volumes, the demand for EHR and EMR platforms to manage complex patient data has increased. Big data analysis is becoming slowly and steadily easier. As a result, hospitals are increasingly focusing on building their capabilities of integrating various hospital systems with EHRs, something which was unheard of or unthinkable just about 15 to 20 years back. A medication error, which is not very rare, is an unintended failure in drug treatment process that has the potential to adversely affect the health of the patient and the ultimate outcome. Mistakes in the prescribing, dispensing, storing, preparation, administration of medicines are the most common preventable causes of undesired adverse events and present a major public health burden. If you really seriously analyze, the third commonest cause of a hospital death is an iatrogenic one. Proper care is assured when patients and healthcare providers are given access to complete and accurate EHRs that provide a comprehensive patient illness history. Such records can improve diagnosis, prevent errors, save time, and even decrease waiting period for the patients. To achieve quality care, the implementation and successful utilization of CDSS and its complementary system are mandatory for hospitals and physicians, which is accelerating their adoption across the globe. The Indian Chamber of Commerce is a premier business center of India. Established in 1925, headquarters in Calcutta, Indian Chamber has presence in all major cities across the country and has a significant role in healthcare sector of India and organized so many healthcare related activities so far and will continue doing so. Wolters Kluwer, a worldwide renowned organization, provides trusted clinical technology and evidence-based solutions that drive effective decision-making and outcomes across the healthcare. Wolters Kluwer is specialized in clinical effectiveness, learning, research, and safety. Now, without taking much time, I'm handing over to Dr. Sanjeev Singh, moderator of today's session, to please continue. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ramakant. I think that was a fantastic beginning and superb overview of clinical decision support system. I think you covered succinctly what exactly we are looking at, and you have very nicely also linked it with COVID so that the comprehension becomes very, very easy. So we'll get started. Thank you, Indian Chamber of Commerce, and thank you, Wolters Kluwer, for organizing this evidence-based e-meeting. And the topic of the e-meeting is need for clinical decision support system. So as Dr. Ramakant very nicely put forward that there is a standardization and there is a uniformity of care which is required, which lacks. Basically, if there are 4 or 5 medical units in a medical college, internal medicine units, the status epilepticus, the status asthmaticus, COPD, acute exacerbation, they all will be treated differently by different people. So why is that? And is there a scope of improving those practices? So we have a fantastic illustrious panel with us. We have Dr. K. Madan Gopal. Sir has 4 or 5 decades of public health experience, senior consultant in health, Niti Aayog, and it's always a pleasure listening to him because he brings in a profound experience nationally and internationally and has done phenomenal work in Niti Aayog. So thank you very much for joining in today, sir. We also have Dr. Sarb Adhikari, a good friend, and it's always good to hear him. He's been fellow at International Academy of Health Sciences Informatics, expert roster for digital health, WHO, and a very unique combination of a medical person working in digital health who understands both the languages very well. Thank you, Dr. Sarb Adhikari, for joining in today. We have Dr. Geetika Madan Patel, Medical Director and Member of Board of Governance, Parul University, and he is also member of ICC National Healthcare Committee. And thank you, Madam, for joining in. And then we have Joy Chakravarti, a great friend, doing superb work in healthcare and changing the whole paradigm. Great contribution, COO at Hinduja Hospital. Thank you, Joy, for taking time out today. So without further ado, we'll get started. We heard Dr. Ramakant, clinical decision support system looks like, makes a lot of economic sense, makes clinical sense, makes sense in COVID scenario in unprecedented time. So let me first go to the most senior-most colleague among us, Dr. K. Madan Gopalji. So, sir, you have been associated with this public health. You have been very keenly drafting so many health policies and standards, and we have seen so much good work which is coming out for the last 5 years. So, do you think CDSS has a chance in any of the new healthcare programs which have been initiated by Government of India, or how do you see this getting into any of these national policies? You're muted, sir.
I can only say that this is a very important question at the right time. Because if you look at the health system, how it has evolved over the years, we have created a lot of fragmentations. Even in fact, in this sphere also, wherever technology solutions are being envisaged to be used in the system, we have also created silos in the technological space as well. We have launched the National Digital Health Mission, but the architecture for use of technology is there in the system for quite some time. We have mandated the hospitals to have electronic health records way back with the passing of the Clinical Establishment Act in 2010-11. From that time, we are still struggling to see that how the hospital makes electronic health records. That's a challenge is there. The second thing is like any other developing countries. In India also, we are also grappling with the issues of medical errors. Apart from the medical errors, which usually happens in the secondary and the tertiary level case, we do have medical errors in diagnosing the, take for example, how to diagnose a severe anemia at a lower level, how to diagnose complication related to childbirth at a peripheral level. We are grappling with issues like that. And a lot of clinical diagnosis support systems have been piloted. But as such, currently we don't have that kind of a policy which can at least see that it can be imbibed into the system or embedded into the system. But we do have a national Ayushman Bharat National Digital Health Mission, which envisages that each and every provider would be digitalized, having an ID. Institution would be having an ID. The patient would be having records. And based on these records, we would be having a system. That's the dream which we are having. We would be creating electronic ID, health ID for a person, but creating electronic health records, which can be used for a decision support system. We have to see that how the system evolves. Right now, ready-made answers are not there, but this kind of efforts, usually it evolves. As we evolve, we learn, and as we learn, we try to adopt the practices, and a system is built on that. We can't be having a perfect system when good things are available. We have to work with good whatever is available and we take it forward. There are examples of clinical disease support system. We are piloting some of the CDSS in your aspirational district. NITI is having an aspirational district program where we are trying to support these districts which have been left behind with the other normal districts in the development, and they are lagging behind the other districts in the indicators. We have been trying to pilot it, how the clinical disease support, decision support system can be there, because we are still grappling with the issue of manpower. That's a technical manpower which is available to provide the services at the last. That means that even at the primary health center, that caters to 20,000 population. There we have tried to see that how an early diagnosis can be made so that a patient can be treated then and there only with the help of this support system. The pilots are going on, but whether it would be included in the policy, unless some evidence is generated, the usefulness of it generated, then only it can come into the main policy thing. Otherwise, the programs are there, architecture is there. We are moving in the direction of electronic health record, though it took 1 decade to formally come to that. We are having an integrated health information platform in which all the programs, that means right from the Nishchay platform to the malaria program, as well as the mother and child tracking system, the HMI system, they will be all riding on this system in the coming days. And it will be talking to the other system, that is the Ayushman Bharat digital health system. So we are trying to see that how we build on this system and use this clinical decision support systems to the places where we are not being able to reach. But definitely that is very much on the cards, and we are piloting many of the things, and we see that how it progresses, how it matures, how it develops. I will stop here. I will come whenever other questions are there. Over to you, please.
Thank you so much, sir. I think very rightly said, and with you at the helm of the leadership, there's a lot of work which has already been done and which you narrated so very well. There is all these programs which got developed, Digital Health Mission, EHR, Clinical Establishment. So lots of programs, architecture, as you rightly said, is in place. We need to not be greedy, and I think we need to take some baby steps and see wherever it is piloted, done well, and the silos could be broken, and more uniformity in care is there. So thank you so much. I think that was very insightful. So Dr. Sab Adhikari, I would like to come to you. Unique combination of being a doctor and superb training with digital health. You, Dr. K. Madan Gopal just mentioned about National Digital Health Mission. Phenomenal national health program. I think that is aspirational and got released. So there is a document which is now existing as a national document. So how do you think, one, is CDSS part of that document? If not, then how do you think CDSS could be incorporated and make a difference in patient care delivery?
Thank you, Dr. Sanjeev Singh, and I'm thanking the organizers also to invite me. It's really a great pleasure and honor to be here. The question is very pertinent. I'll go back even beyond the NDHB. The first document related to health IT in India has been the ITIH, Information Technology Infrastructure for Health, that came out in 2003. So it took 16 years to come to the National Digital Health Blueprint that was released in November 2019, and which is a direct fallout of the National Health Policy 3rd edition that came out in 2017. Now, the National Digital Health Blueprint is an excellent document, and definitely it's worthy following. It recommends all the standards which have been recommended by the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. The first edition we had recommended in August 2013. At that time, India was not a member of the SNOMED International. However, it was revised and the second edition was released in December 2016. And India had become a member of SNOMED City International in March 2014. So in the second edition, December 2016 of the EHR standards of MOHFW, SNOMED City has been mentioned very clearly. The NDHB states that the standards which need to be followed are all the EHR standards mentioned by the MOHFW December 2016. Additionally, HL7 Fire Release 4. So that is what the NDHB is saying. Within this standard, SNOMED City is a very core standard. Unfortunately, the adoption is yet to be there to our optimal use. Now, SNOMED City is inherently logical. And if you have SNOMED City enabled systems, EMR systems and EHR systems, then developing a CDSS becomes easier. CDSS is very much evidence-based. It depends on the population. Like if you take the example of Watson for oncology, unfortunately, it didn't work the way it should have globally, because ultimately it's the individual that matters. So we may have evidence from millions of patients, but it may not work for the patient in front of me. So that's very important. We definitely need to get more data. We need to do more trials and see how accurate it can become. As Dr. Madan Gopal rightly said, the Clinical Establishment Act that came in 2010 and amended in 2012 recommends the use of EHRs, but health is a state subject in India. So even till date, I think hardly 11 states have adopted the CEA. And even there, EHR is not being implemented. So there are two ways of adopting anything. One is a top-down approach. You have a legal mandate. The other is a bottom-up approach. That means whether users demand. And I think users, especially the urban users, are increasing their demand. Because now we have all these Fitbits, I mean, all those wearables, Fitbit, Apple Watch, and so on. And people who are using them want those data to be used for the management of their conditions. Unfortunately, the doctors can't decipher that because we have a lack in health data literacy, more so among the health professionals. So it's a huge thing, but to put it short, I mean, SNOMED City cannot exist without an EMR. So EMR is the first thing. And one of the things I've been trying to say at many forums, then here I repeat, if the National Medical Commission makes it mandatory for any
So I don't know whether we lost Dr. Sarvadhikari.
paradigm shift.
Yeah, sure.
And
go ahead.
And if this comes in, I think CDSS would become more of a routine educational curricular tool. And I think that is the thing we should look forward to. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that was very well put. There are lots of steps. You did mention that it is taking time. It is taking more than 1.5 decades to come to a fruition and a good conclusion, whether it is with respect to digital health, whether Clinical Establishment Act and health literacy. SNOMED City being included and India being signatory also has taken time. But I think you mentioned a good point that National Medical Commission could be a good start, where the undergraduates and postgraduates get trained. And now, since it is a competency-based medical education, I think that is a fantastic start. So that brings me to to my next panelist, Dr. Geetika. Madam, how would you think? So, if National Medical Commission adopts it, undergraduate, postgraduate training happens, do you think on a day-to-day basis, does the clinical practice would improve? Does the clinical care delivery improve? Will the outcome improve? Or are there any good case scenario which you have come across?
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Sanjeev. So yeah, a very interesting discussion has started. So I would like to add to what Dr. Madan Gopal and Dr. Sukhendra has highlighted. So you're very right in saying that CDSS is a next step, and the first step has to be a good EHR, good, strong, and a robust EHR. Before going to the EHR, we need a very strong perception in the doctors and in the medical students, and a literacy of EHR. So right now, what is happening as managing a hospital as well as the medical institutions, what I see is that there is a lack of literacy in the doctors in terms of advantages of having an EHR. So the same doctors, they prefer using computerized systems and digitalization in the rest of part of their lives. But when it comes to documenting the medical cases in forms of EHR in the hospital systems, they are very reluctant. And the reasons behind that is they have not learned anything in their practice when they were post-graduating from the medical institutions or when they were studying the MBBS in their colleges. So very correctly pointed out by Dr. Nath that the undergraduates, right from the undergraduates, we need to have a computer literacy and an EHR literacy. What is an electronic medical record? What is the importance of generating it? And further, how will it strengthen the National Digital Health Mission, which the country is proposing? And see, there are things which become a part of your practice. So whatever I've learned in my 10 years of learning plus practice, that is what I'm going to practice after I postgraduate or I super specialize in a particular subject. So when a student after post-graduation passes from a particular hospital or a college, he's practiced to do, he is trained to do the way he has done earlier. So when I am post-graduating, I open up my clinic, I join a hospital or whatever I do, I just start doing the way I have learned it in the earlier 3 or 4 years of my practice. So it is absolutely crucial to bring this to the medical institutions where the students are studying, especially the postgraduate institutions, be it MD or MS programs, be it diploma programs, or be it DNB programs. So if as a student, I am used to entering all the details in the EHR, even after practicing, this has become a part of my habit. So I'm habituated to it. So then I'll not be used to writing things on the prescriptions, and I'll make sure that in my clinic or in my hospital also I start practicing that. The thing which everybody and doctors especially need to understand is that the CDSS and the EHR are basically to augment their decision making and not replacing their decision making. Many times we have come across like we keep getting requisition of trials for the CDSS systems. For example, recently we had a requisition for a radionomics trial for diagnostic algorithm testing of the tuberculosis patients. So what happens is usually the perception of doctors is that in the CDSS, if the CDSS will come in picture, then their values, their credibility will go down and it will challenge their decision making. So basically the clarity on part and the literacy to doctors that the CDSS systems are to augment and enhance the decision making, to standardize the healthcare delivery, and not to replace any kind of decision or judgment by a clinician or a doctor is also something which is very important. And as very correctly pointed that the first step is the EHR. If I talk about our hospital, I've been struggling to implement 100% EHR, but still around 60% or 70% compliance has been possible. The complete implementation of EHR is something which makes the data robust, which makes the data 100% complete for you to get to the non-knowledgeable CDSS systems, which work upon, as we know, they work upon the artificial intelligence and machine learning. So for them to work properly, we need robust data according to every geographical location in the country. For example, if I am practicing here in Gujarat, I need the data of Gujarat to give me the policies which can be adjusted geographically as per the standards of the global policy. So it is very important to have a complete and thorough, till we have 100% data in our systems centrally in as per the states in the cities. Before that, it is very difficult to implement the CDSS in place. The reliability becomes a question. So that is what I feel the first thing we need to do is 100% implementation of EHRs. The National Health Authority, the NHA, have started a wonderful job by making it mandatory for the PA under the PMJY. If you talk about the hospitals which are right now empaneled under the Ayushman Bharat, the PMJY system, they all are practicing the digitalization. I mean, this is a software. I'm sure all of us are aware of this. And every patient has a card, has a PMJY card, and all the documents of that patient are supposed to be uploaded in the system. So this is one step which has been taken towards digitalization. But you know what is practically happening is right now what is being done is that in this digital system is that we are many times if we don't have the electronic records, we are uploading the scanned documents in the system. So basically it is again a compromise with the electronic record, and which is kind of a let go arrangement with the manual records which are being scanned. So as such, we are having data per patient, but that is not the real kind of the data which will help us make a registry of diseases, which will help us analyze to a certain extent and help us in formulating our CDSS. So yes, 100% implementation of an EHR across the country, which includes the medical institutions, especially the teaching institutions first. So NMC has to play a role. First of all, we need a module of computer literacy and EHR in the undergraduate curriculum. And in the postgraduate, we need the NMC to make it mandatory. I mean, all the medical institutions right now, the NMC has made it optional. We can have a computerized, we need to have computerized records, but that is computerized records does not mean EHR as per NMC. It just means that you have a HMIS registration system in your hospital. That is just the OPD, IPD registration and maybe the discharge summaries. And EHR needs to be 100% implemented in all the medical institutions. And then it gets habituated into the postgraduate so that once they become the practicing doctors, it becomes a habit and the implementation becomes much easier. And we can, I feel there has to be something linked with the registration of the doctors. Every 5 years when we are renewing our registration, we need to ensure that whatever patients we are seeing in our respective hospitals, we are generating sufficient EHR out of that, and that can be something which can be evaluated for the registration and renewal of the registration of the doctors. Otherwise, top-down approach is very important. I feel without that, only bottom down will not work. So top-down approach is something which we really need to make it 100%.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Geetika. I think that was very interesting to note. You did mention about augmentation, medical education, NMC playing a role, and there is a fear factor among the clinicians, and that's why the adoption is low. So, Joy, Dr. Geetika mentioned about top-down approach, and you are at the top position, handling one of the most prestigious healthcare institution in the country. You are part of many national, international healthcare bodies where you take critical decisions. How do you think adoptability as a top-down approach among doctors will work with CDSS?
So thank you, Dr. Sanjeev. I think it is nice to meet you over digitally rather than the chances of meeting physically have gone. And a pleasure to meet all the other esteemed panelists here. So you have asked a very good question, and if I need to give the very frank answer, I hope everybody appreciates that openness. When you say the top-down approach, I strongly believe and I feel in the medical field, especially the private healthcare sector, where still the healthcare delivery system is, I'll not say managed, but dictated and organized with the inputs from the clinicians. There you cannot have a carrot and stick kind of approach or from top. We need to explain them. We need to explain the consultant that what are the benefits they are likely to have by virtue of getting this in place. So some of the ways what we do, the thing is first, everybody aspires to get more number of patients to treat in the hospital or in the outpatient department. Think about the scenario where already we always talk that in India, we have 10 lakhs beds lesser than what is supposed to be, and we need to bridge up. Now, how do you do this? One of the thing is that the current, whatever infrastructure you have, how do you optimally use? Now, in a smaller scenario, in my hospital, I need to explain the doctor that if you admit a patient, adopt this kind of tools, what is going to happen first? It is likely to reduce the length of stay of the patient. When the length of stay of the patient is reduced, automatically the turnover of patients in the same bed goes up. So I can create more number of beds in my hospital than before. The second thing today, I heard from the other panelists about the defensive medicine, evidence-based medicine, and things like that. If you see, this is going to be one of the very useful tool to safeguard the interest of the clinicians when they are adopting this or following the path of this CDSS. If you don't follow some of these, tomorrow you are likely to be questioned, and you are likely to be questioned that when you have some tool like this, why you are not adopting it. I heard about the example of IBM Watson and all before, but a simple thing, when you have less number of medical errors, whether it is related to prescription, whether it is related to decision making, whether it is related to your documentation, the patient outcomes are going to be better. Even if I don't look at all these aspects from business point of view, even if I don't look at it that how do I make money by discharging a patient soon, but ultimately all of us are aiming for a situation, for a scenario where we want to see the outcome, the success rate, the all sorts of satisfaction related indexes are high in my healthcare facility. So we need to showcase this kind of value, and these value additions, the value based care is definitely going to take, it may take some time, but it is definitely going to get into the mind of the users, which is not the top management but the clinicians, and I'm sure they will come forward and look for this kind of supports from the management, that how do you develop and how do you support me to get a system, infrastructure of clinical CDSS in my own practice. And I'm sure that is going to take our Indian healthcare much forward, much ahead of many other countries. So with this, I'll stop here and we'll wait for the next question.
Yeah, thanks, Joy. I think you brought in very pertinent points of safeguarding clinicians. That is extremely important. But you also said that it possibly could reduce length of stays, improve discharges. It makes business sense. So we need to sort of look at all the approaches which would be required for CDSS adoption. So, Dr. Madan Gopalji, if I can come to you, and you have heard other panelists talking about the adoption factor. We know private healthcare is delivering close to 70% of healthcare in India, but it is extremely competitive and fragmented. The standardization comes from public sector, and the scaling comes from public sector. They bring in any adoption at a much higher level. Ayushman Bharat is one such program where they do mention about electronic health records. They do have taken some few definitive steps. So do you see how this program or any other program could help in CDSS literacy or generation, and maybe help in overall outcome?
Dr. Sanjeev, definitely. we are aware about this, that this is going to help if you take the example of Ayushman Bharat, because though it won't be used for patient management, but definitely the records which are being generated, that can be used for audit purposes. Right now, that use which is there for auditing, that is coming on. If you look at the fraud control and other measures, if this kind of measurement is there for a particular package, this kind of algorithm is there, and this kind of support system is available. Though the providers and the patient may not be aware, but at the back end, they know that if the provider has provided this kind of algorithm for arriving at a diagnosis and providing treatment, obviously, when the claim processing, which is moving towards on automation, this support system will play a major role in that. Because for the automatic clearance of the claims, because we are thriving towards that, manual processing usually take time. If automatic processing, clinical, we do see a scope of clinical decision support system there, because whether the provider has provided followed that clinical support system or not. Obviously, if he has followed all the algorithms, obviously that claim would be this. That's one thing. Now, coming to your question that whether it can be brought for the patient management and setting of standards, as I mentioned in my earlier answer, that means we are piloting few of the support systems to see that how it works. Because support systems are meant for reducing the error in medication, error in arriving at a particular clinical management protocol, or error in the pharmaceuticals and other things. It's not for patient management, it's for improving the patient management, reduction in the errors, as well as seeing the whatever you are doing that can be done in an effective and efficient way. We are trying to see that. One of the challenges which we are, one important thing which I want to highlight, because we always talk saying that 70% of the healthcare happens in the private sector. No, 70% of the healthcare expenses happens in the private sector. Whereas if you talk about the footfalls and the volume of the patient seen is more or less equal, 50-55% like that. 50%, 55% utilization in some of the states happens in the public sector, whereas around 60% or 50% in the private sector in some of the states. But the expenditure wise, if you look at the volume of expenses happens more in the private sector, and that too 40% goes for the drugs and the diagnostics. Okay, and the investigation. Major chunk of the expenditure goes into the investigation, diagnostics, and the medicines. Okay, that leave aside that thing. We come to the clinical decision support system. So we are piloting this thing, and we are trying to see that, because if you look at the focus of the preventive care, its focus is more or less two elements are driven. That is the reproductive and child health. We are still grappling with the issue of maternal mortality ratio. This is an area where the extension services which are there, if a support system is there, how a woman who is taking care of a pregnant woman in the periphery can identify the red flags, so that a decision, she can take a decision whether to deliver that lady normally or refer to a higher facility or not. We are looking from that angle, where a decision can at least save that person. So we are just piloting many of the things in our aspiration district, as well as this kind of pilots. They are going on in the other places. In Karnataka, you will find, in Maharashtra also you will find many people, they have come up with a pilot for seeing that how this support system can work. In Assam, the Piramal Foundation is doing, they are partnering with us in the aspirational district, and they are leading these efforts, and they are piloting in 10 to 20 districts. Okay, how they can improve the services by use of this support system. At our place, we are having a NDAP program, which is a digital literacy and other thing. We are trying to see that how we bring together all the knowledge and the repositories that are available, so that we can provide better care and a quality care. And mass, as well as improve the quality of care, this through the PMJ network hospital. The first step in that direction, as mentioned by my previous speaker, that now we are moving towards EHR. At least if you are empaneled in the PMJ hospital, that's a PMJ hospital, you should be using an electronic health record. Why? Because the algorithms and other things for the claim processing as well, that essentially is a modification of or adaptation of the critical decision support system, whether the hospital is following that thing or not. If the hospital is following that, then obviously the claim processing becomes easier and the unnecessary flags are not created on that hospital on that transaction. So these are lot of applications which are evolving. In the coming days, we'll be seeing a more or less adaptation of the support systems in the pharmaceuticals, in the diagnostics, in the application actuarial analysis also, right up to the actuarial analysis also. If so many patients are there, if you talk about the disease burden of a particular district, if you are having a clinical decision support system, now exactly you can pinpoint that what kind of the volumes and what kind of treatment, what kind of cost would be there. We can go to that extent. So only thing is how we adopt it and how we take it forward. So we are just working in that direction and see that how the things evolve. Over to you, please.
Perfect. So thank you so much, sir. That was very, very well put. You did mention. So when you were speaking, I was thinking about this claim redressal. That itself is such a nice way, because if it is done uniformly, the claims gets processed and you don't have to again unnecessarily query, and there are no unnecessarily inventory which is being used. And the other point which you mentioned about drugs and diagnostics and devices making 40% of the bill, that again is very alarming. So very good point. So Dr. Sarvadhikari, what we are seeing is that there is a lot of data. You saw Dr. Madan Gopalji mentioning diagnostics, drug, it has 40% of the bills. There is so much of data. When we see the hospital is full of registers. They are collecting a lot of raw information. There is some part of EHR which could be skeletal, which could be some functional. So how do we convert? How do we say that all this could be a good clinical informatics, which could also convert into good clinical outcome? And how does CDSS help?
Yeah, before actually responding to the specific question, I'd say something about the CDSS per se. I mean, when we talk about clinical decision support system, that is also basically an application where this artificial intelligence, machine learning, AI, ML are being used. A very overhyped word being used everywhere. But what really, I mean, particularly clinicians often, in fact, Joy talked about that you get pissed off really because are you going to be replaced? The point is that those are computer programs and they are not competing with the brain. It's computer versus brain is a wrong notion that we usually carry on. It's computer brain plus brain. And if it's computer plus brain, it has to be better than either alone. So that is the thing people tend to forget, that we are not replacing, we are augmenting. And in fact, that's why many also say that augmentative intelligence and so on. Now, coming to this, what you said, data, the unfortunate scenario, you'd be very much well aware. Even in the rare cases where people have a lot of data, whether be it in the government sector or in the private sector, often there's a dog in the manger policy. Neither they are themselves using the data for any good purpose, nor they're sharing it to anyone else. So here comes the important thing of sharing, policy for sharing. I mean, and then of course those privacy, confidentiality and security concerns will come. We are having the Personal Data Protection Bill 2019 still in the Parliament. It's yet to become an act. Once it becomes an act, it will give some directions. But till then, we have some health data management policy, but sharing is still not universally accepted. And unless there is this sharing of health information, we cannot really have a useful CDSS. And to share, again, the very basic thing that's required is standards. Otherwise, interoperability won't be there. So whether the same data, similar data are there in different hospitals, and if they're not in standards compliant formats, then you cannot really retrieve that. And I'll get back into again. So if you have a SNOMED city enabled system everywhere throughout India, I think that one single step would go a long way. And Stomed City use in India is free. So I think that needs to be encouraged and maybe also rewarded in some way. So I think that's there. So absolutely, we need to utilize the data. So we need to have very clear-cut data sharing policies, which would be legally acceptable and also ethically and socially acceptable. That's very important. At the same time, I mean, if you can help improve the health outcomes of others, I don't think anyone would really be minding if that data is mined and new knowledge is generated. So I think these are important things. So the data sharing policy, standards, and of course, I mean, again, health data literacy, that you need to know that there is a value addition. If you share data, you'd get back insights which would do value addition, which would improve the quality of healthcare, which would improve the health outcomes. So I think capacity building of human resources, we have a long way to go. It's not just training them digitally, it's much beyond that.
Perfect. I think you touching very relevant points about literacy, capacity building, standardization. So, Dr. Geetika, how do we implement all what has been said by all these panelists? You talked about EHR, and then your hospital also adopts close to 60% of EHR, which looks like one of the important ingredients for either computerized personal order entry or CDS's adoption. So there are many hospitals, 99% of the hospital who doesn't have EHR. So within this scenario, how do you think, should we all wait? Should we take some baby steps? What do we do?
So that is a difficult question, Dr. Sanjeev. Yeah. So that is what I was talking about earlier. Like the top-down approach, which I was talking about, it was not meant for my hospital or any other hospital. In my premises, I can be the controller. But if we talk about the entire country as a whole and formulating a policy which is rationally acceptable to all the doctors as far as the implementation is concerned, it has to be a combination of both the approaches. So top-down approach as well as the bottom-up approach. So in that, the perception of the doctors first needs to be built. And as Dr. Supendra was talking about this uniform implementation of one system across the places, you must be knowing that in the country currently the majority of the doctors are into the nursing homes or clinics, and we all know that the nursing homes and the clinics do not even have a computer in place. Forget about the EHR or CTSS. There are so many clinics which are still working only on the basis of papers. There are no computers there. They don't even have a registry of the patients. If we talk about a record, earlier year records, they will just take out there all the stationery and the big registers in which there will be some numbers and the names of the patients. So the first thing which needs to be done, I guess, is a standard, simple and basic EHR system, which can be implemented across big hospitals, small hospitals, nursing homes, primary health centers. That basic software has to be regulated and implemented all across the country, which generates at least the basic data about the patient, his provisional diagnosis or the basic symptomatology. Not, let us forget about the entire course of admission, all the treatment records and the discharge summaries. Let us start. We have, as you told, we have to start with the baby steps, and that is how a database of the clinical diagnosis starts building up. A registry, we call. See, right now we do not have the disease registries as they exist across worldwide, but we do not have good registries here in our country. We do not have a trauma registry. We do not have a good cancer registry. So basically the first point is making these registries, and then we can go to the next step of generating all the documents in the electronic form. So if this is not made mandatory for the doctors in the small places to do, I mean in their nursing homes, in their private hospitals, in the big hospitals as a policy, it has already been put up in the policy, we know that, but the implementation needs to have certain regulation based on it. Otherwise, there is a lot of reluctance in terms of acceptance, because people feel very easy to write things, and most of the doctors, it doesn't give the added advantage to them. overall as a policy making in the registries, it is going to help. But that is somehow not understood at everybody's level. So सबको easy लगता है ना, prescription पे लिख के medicine देना is very easy. And if we ask them to, they have to have the login. Once they are used to the system, they get acclimatized to the system, then they find it very easy. But the initial reluctance and the initial level challenges, they have to be overcome in form of a regulation that everybody needs to have this. Like, for example, registration is mandatory for all doctors, right? So we need to have certain things like following an EHR is mandatory for renewing your registration or something like that. And that is how everybody can start using. Otherwise, I do not see any other way out in which all the suddenly we can bring a behavioral change in a 50-year-old or a 60-year-old doctor and convince him to start using an EHR in his clinic, which he has been not using since last 20, 30 years. So that is something which is really difficult. So it has to be implementation in form of a regulation that has to happen. And then of course the baby steps. Yeah, so CDSS adoption will take time. Definitely, it is understandable. But EHR implementation can take place in the coming 5-10 years if we strongly take it forward as a policy, as a regulation.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Gitika. I think you mentioned there are challenges, but then there are a few possible solutions which could be taken. So, Joy, is one solution business sense? If CDSS makes business sense, and if the cost comes down and it's a cost benefit, it's a cost effective, leading to clinical effectiveness, does that encourage hospitals or clinicians to adopt? What would you think?
So I think partly I answered this question in my earlier discussion. I completely agree that if there is a wide spread of adaptation of this, then in that case, definitely the cost is going to be less, which is going to make it very much affordable. But I'll put it in other way. I heard from Dr. Gitika stating that this is going to be implemented across the country, whether it is a small healthcare organization or big healthcare organization. I think more than cost, we need to address the fundamental issue of attitude. Are we ready mentally? Are we ready professionally to accept that we are going to move into this kind of platform? After, if we have a positive answer, if we are affirmative about this, then I go to the next stage about the cost bit of it. I completely believe and I think if we move into this platform, we can definitely show the good ROI out of this. Some of the ROIs I'll tell you, it looks again a very, business or case business mind oriented approach, but I don't mind to share that. Today in my hospital, if a physician or a surgeon is writing some test and medicine, which is going to be part of my, this solution, I am going to keep a track of the entire business which is getting generated, and I can have those tests, I can get those prescriptions honored in my hospital instead of losing it out to somebody else. So if you look at it from that angle, then definitely it gives a business sense. It is going to be a correct decision to have. If I look at it, that how many people they monitor your patient retention in the hospital. Again, it has got nothing to do clinically, but when you have somebody who is a diabetic, hypertension, visited your hospital, how frequently they are visiting your hospital, whether they are following the norms which has been given by the doctor, very easily you can pick up and you can give them reminder, you can get them into your so-called disease management program very easily if you have a platform like this. In India, in most of the cases, we don't see that what kind of patient retention is happening. Instead of that, we look for that how do we get more and more new cases in my hospital. If you have your community engaged with you, which is very easily possible through this kind of platform, then your life becomes simple. And remember, this is going to help your quality outcome of your patient's care is also going to be enhanced. You have done a lot of this work related to prompts. Okay, now in these prompts, what is the fundamental thing you need to look at? You need to look at it periodically, how things have progressed. If you don't have a proper backbone, IT backbone, proper system of this clinical decision support system, how are you going to have all this in place? When you talk about high quality, that can't happen without this platform. And please remember, there is a dichotomy. I'm a person who is taking care of the business, but also I get completely aligned with the quality. Now, if I don't have quality in place and only trying to do business, then my cost of non-conformance or cost of non-conforming to quality is going to cost heavy. So to ensure and to have that alignment, I think these are all going to be business case to show that yes, there may be an expenditure. I consider this as an investment which can give you better ROI, and in long term you remain the leader in the healthcare delivery.
Thank you, Joy. I think you made it very, very clear that yes, it makes business sense, but you touched in or used the right word, attitude of people who needs to sort of come together and also use it. So let me quickly come to Madan Gopalji again. And sir, we in state of Kerala, we worked with as an Indian Academy of Pediatrics, worked with the health sector and said that there are 3 causes and can we bring down the infant mortality rate to a single digit. And we followed certain clinical workflows and clinical norm, and it was sort of CDSS, and we were sort of successful. You did mention about maternal mortality rate as a good pilot. So there is right now, unfortunately, the whole work is towards curative. So is there anything which is preventive, lifestyle modification at the community level, or things which could be where CDSS at primary and secondary level could be used?
I have, Dr. Sanjeev, I have already mentioned that the pilots are going on. I just cited an example of maternal mortality ratio to maternal deaths or the emergency obstetric care. Apart from that, there are other applications. One thing you have mentioned that Kerala is piloting how to reduce the infant mortality rate. Because if you look at the health system in the country, so we are having health workers at a population of 1,000, that is ASHA workers. Then we are having ANMs or the multi-purpose worker female at a population of 3,000 to 5,000 population. Then we are having a contact of medical officer at a population of 20 to 30,000 population. But this is an idealistic situation. But if you look at the way things have progressed, a lot of primary health centers, they are not there. They are not manned by a proper medical officer that is who is trained, who can handle this kind of emergencies. He has to act. We have been reading and we have been teaching that doctor as a leader. Where is that leader to teach the other peripheral workers in managing the cases? Here comes the use of this clinical decision support system. Because instead of teaching the person to treat, the person should be trained in identifying the problems and referring at a proper pace, because road connectivity has improved. That is also contributing to reduction of the maternal deaths or the other catastrophe due to illnesses. If you can at least train the peripheral most worker with the use of this system, saying that when to refer, till what time you can observe the patient at your observation site. So that would be a good service rather than teaching the person and extending the other thing. The person should know when to refer so that the delay doesn't happen. That's one thing we are trying to see, that how the preventive aspects can reach. The second thing which can be piloted, which can be done, is how to bring on the promotive aspect. Promotive aspects can only work when we know the determinants of this. Determinants will come with the use of the support systems, including the AI and the machine learning. For that, we require a lot of data. We don't have longitudinal data which can throw us insights into the determinants. If you talk about the malnutrition, I'm just citing a community-based issue, that is the malnourishment. We are grappling with the issue of malnourishment in the form of stunting and wasting. Right now, we don't know what we are eating. What are the cultural practices? What are the food habits which we are having? We don't have the data. We have to build on the data so that the determinants can be thrown out and we can institute this support systems for having an effective intervention. Okay, which are the areas where we have to intervene? That system is not there. Even if electronic health records are there, we require longitudinal set of data. Right now, what is happening, the drawback which I'm seeing is we do have a lot of cross-sectional data. So much data is there, so many records are there. Where is the longitudinal one? Had it been IHI, I'm just citing an example, the Integrated Health Information Portal, which have been rolled out by Ministry of Health. They were working on this for the last, since 2011-12. Now they are having this system. Suppose I want to have a decision saying that if a person is having a BCG vaccination, whether the person has got COVID or not. That kind of analogy I can't draw. And there was another thing which was going on. The persons who are having higher BMI, they had the severity of COVID was more in that patients. But where is the data for coming to that so that a clinical decision support system can make and a red flag can raise? If the person with so much BMI is coming with presenting so and so thing, a red flag is there. Immediately, that can be looked after by a senior person, and the other things can be managed at the other levels. We are trying to see that how these support systems can help us in doing the triages whenever it is required in an epidemic situation or any centers where emergencies are being handled. So we have to see that how we build a system so that the triages happens and the resource which have been available at that center, they have been optimally utilized. Otherwise, whatever it was happening, that means the resource crunch is there and the person who can handle emergencies, he's been looking after the mundane efforts and other things. That kind of triaging, for having that kind of system, we should have an effect. We are working towards in developing that kind of system so that the resources which are already scarce, they are being utilized properly. In this way, we can move ahead and see that how it evolves. I'm just using this term how it evolves because there is nothing a perfect system. Which works in Kerala, what may not work in Chhattisgarh because of the other socio-cultural dimensions. What works in Delhi may not work in Mumbai. We have to see that what kind of systems they evolve in the coming year and a consensus can build around that thing. Over to you, please.
Right. So good point, sir. I think you brought in the referral and the promotive aspect also, and definitely the energy malnutrition is an important aspect which could be taken care. COVID, I think, was a good scenario where CDSS would have been helpful because we pumped in ivermectin, we pumped in hydroxychloroquine, we pumped in azithromycin, we pumped in doxycycline, we pumped in mild cases methylprednisolone. We gave everything what was possible, and CDSS would have really made a huge difference of standardization in the delivery. So, Dr. Sarvadhikari, what you are listening is that there are challenges. It's not so easy. It's a new science. It's a new tool. There are lots of challenges. Are there any immediate 2 or 3 solutions?
Yeah, I think what you said about this COVID-19 pandemic, the unfortunate thing is that this came from nowhere and we hardly knew anything about it. There was no evidence. And when you don't have any evidence, I mean, you can't develop a CDSS either. So CDSS would not have been possible the way the COVID-19 pandemic suddenly landed upon us. And that brings us to the very basic thing. I mean, data. You have to collect data. You have to record it. In fact, the other part of the conference today is on evidence-based medicine. You have to get the evidence, and evidence comes from the data. Unless you get the data, and when you collect the data, I think data quality has to be assured. That is a very, very important thing, often overlooked. I mean, when you say data quality, it has to be I mean, most importantly, it has to be accurate, it has to be complete, and it has to be in real time. Often what happens, like we have the systems like the IDSP where the data was collected over a period of time. It often doesn't come back immediately. Of course, now technology has made that advance and we can get a lot of data in real time. But someone has to collect it, someone has to verify it, the authenticity of the data. In fact, one of the things which has been happening even you see at the COVID-19 trends, I mean, there has been weekly corrections. Almost all the states have been doing. So suddenly one day you find so many thousands of cases added. They're just actually adding the missing numbers, which were not added earlier, but suddenly they got. So on one day you see a spike, which is not the reflection of the reality. It's just you're making the numbers come proper. So that sort of thing, I think there are lots of issues. I mean, ultimately, I mean, human being is a psycho-biosocial being. So it's not technology, healthcare alone, but also the social determinants of health. And now we have the new term, the digital determinants of health, because connectivity issues are there anywhere in India, even in the national capital or the bigger metros, connectivity is not assured. So I think lots of issues are there, but technology is definitely helping a lot. But what we need really, as I said earlier, I mean, this health data literacy. When we talk about capacity building, it's not just knowing about how to use computers, but also which data would be useful for a purpose. I mean, I'll give an example. You're talking about pediatrics. If you measure the growth of a child with the growth of the hair, that may not really correlate in any way. I mean, because it's very different in different children and it doesn't reflect the nutritional status also most of the time. So that sort of thing, you need to know which data, the data that I'm collecting, does it serve the purpose? And that is what health data literacy is about. And I think awareness about this, awareness about the value addition, which many other panelists also talk. I mean, what's in it for me? That's a natural human question anyone would ask. So if I don't get back any value by using any system, why should I use it? So those things, I mean, the values have to be shown. I mean, the analyzed insights that they improve at the point of care, the quality of healthcare and the outcomes. I think those are some of the things we need to do right now. We need to have a big awareness drive across the spectrum. And I think that's an unfortunate thing we don't want to learn.
Very true. Difficult to get that thing started and get difficult to have the health literacy program initiated. So Dr. Geetika, we heard about this evidence-based medicine. So there is diagnostic stewardship, there's medication management, there's clinical practice. We talked about preventive, we talked about promotive, there's so much of curative. So are there any good examples and so that I can go back, encourage today, feel encouraged and motivated and use CDSS or at least look for CDSS solutions from tomorrow onwards?
See, examples, if you exactly talk about the examples of implementation of CDSS to put it up to others, I don't think there are any. But yes, standardization of the health policies definitely helps in improving the clinical outcome of the patients. There are endless examples for that. Evidence-based medicine has been proven out to be improving the clinical outcomes, improving the decision making. There is no doubt about that. There are multiple research papers which have been published. NABH, all the accreditations across the hospitals, they stress upon the standardization in terms of the standard operating procedures in various areas. For example, if you talk about, say, critical care, in any critical care, in any good ICU, if you do not have the SOPs and the guidelines in place, be it the guidelines for management of a patient who is to be resuscitated, be it the guidelines for a patient who has entered into sepsis today. So standard operating procedures on the basis of evidences, they 100% help in improving the clinical outcome, improving the several other things like investment or expenditure of the patient in the hospital, improving the length of, decreasing the length of stay of the patient in the hospital, and multiple other things. So standard operating procedures, as somebody rightly pointed out at the beginning of the session, that in bigger medical institutions, what is happening is in a single department, there are 5 different clinicians, and all of them, they practice in their own different way, because there are a lot of things in medicine still which are very subjective. It depends upon my experience as a clinician, which I have built over a number of years, that how I want to treat my patient of type 2 diabetes, and the other person who is sitting right next to me in the other examination cubicle will treat it differently. So that subjectivity is the charm of medicine somehow, but I still feel that the standardization and the basic policies in place, they have to be the base of things in terms of when you talk about decision making. The rest of the thing, the over and above things, like which matter up to 20 to 30%, can be subjective and based upon the expertise and the experience of that particular clinician. But definitely the standard healthcare guidelines, the SOPs, they need to be in place in every particular department to improve the clinical outcome, and they work upon a lot of other things. So not only on clinical outcome, if we talk about the ROIs, if we talk about the expenditure of the patient, if we talk about length of the stay of the patient in the hospital, everything matters a lot when you standardize your policies, your guidelines.
Right. So we come to the end of today's program, and we would request Joy. He holds the top position, and everybody says now, if you regulate CDSS would be important. So very quickly, Dr. Madan Gopalji has to leave. How would you tomorrow regulate the whole thing? So if you have to leave, Madan Gopalji, we understand. Please go ahead. Last question to Joy, and then we'll have Harish close the meeting.
Shall I respond to how we can regulate, or it's a very different question, because it is still maturing, because we are still not mature to regulate it, because we have to see and understand that how it is evolving, how it is effective, what is the evidence which is available, whether misuse is happening or not. Unless that kind of thing is there, then only we can talk about. Till such time we can talk about setting standards and bringing in quality elements into this clinical development system. I will just stop here. Thank you very much for interacting. I have to rush for another physical meeting.
Sure.
Institute like this. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for attending the meeting, sir. It was a real pleasure to speak to you. So Joy, final comment on CDSS.
So from which dimension you want to ask?
Will you adopt from tomorrow onwards, encourage people, invest in CDSS? What will you do?
So I have a partner here, Walter Kluers, in front of me.
They've adopted it.
That is why you are a smart leader.
No. So already we have adopted. They know about it. So we have taken in both the hospitals, it has been taken up. And I think the challenging thing is, how do you ensure what Dr. Geetika was mentioning? You may have 20% very early adopters, maybe next 40% will take time. But the most important, the last 20-25%, how do you convince them and show them the value proposition of adaptation? When you are able to do that, then only you will get the success. So I'm quite sure and confident that it will happen soon.
Perfect. So fantastic. Thank you so much, Joy, Dr. Sarvadhikari, Dr. Geetika, and Madan Gopalji in absentia. It was a real pleasure to speak to you. CDSS is definitely a new topic, fantastic model. Let's see how do we adopt. So over to you, Harish ji.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I think distinguished panelists for providing such great insights. It was a very fascinating conversation. I completely thoroughly enjoyed it. If I have, I just made some notes when we were talking. I think, as mentioned in the beginning of the discussion, I think we believe that the COVID-19 pandemic, it had principally emphasized the need of evidence-based medicine and the clinical information requirement in our healthcare system. So evidence-based medicine has grown in importance as way of providing the finest medical care and achieving I think at the end of the day, it's all related to how well the patient outcomes are measured and be driven. So evidence-based medicine also, which I noticed also was aims to enhance healthcare delivery by upgrading the medical decisions, using that specific clinical knowledge, clinical information, and other related health informations, whether it was the medical medicines and antibiotics, various elements which were spoken today. In fact, as mentioned by the esteemed panelists, I think just now also, evidence-based medicine should become the standard in future, since it enhances practitioners' knowledge as well as aids in standardizing patient care, which was also talked about quite a lot today. Technologically, I think that's where we play a role also. I think integrated evidence-based medicine approach, talking about EHR and others, and having that CDS system, which we will also talk about, I think it would help clinicians at the point of care, allowing them to combine their expertise, because at the end of the day, that's the first thing. It combines their expertise with the information and recommendation, which is offered by the evidence-based medicine approach. So I think that's a crucial element. Furthermore, I also believe that CDSs should be utilized not just for individual patient to enhance outcomes, which was also talked about in a very subtle way, but also for making public health choices, which was being referred to you in various elements, either even in terms of, let's say, presenting the evidence of vaccinations or the COVID treatments, which you were also mentioning. So I think in a way, CDSs is a powerful, smart digital tool, focuses on two parameters. One is on providing value to the entire care team. It's not only the physicians, but the entire care team, I believe. And most importantly, to ensure improved patient outcomes. So I think I can just probably give a couple of examples what we do also. I think from an up-to-date standard, I don't know how many would know, up-to-date offers guidelines from India. The Indian ICMR guidelines are embedded inside, and these, when they get updated, they also are there. So they don't need to run or search another place to do that. Similarly, if you look at it, there are several Indian physicians who have authored articles or topics in up-to-date. And so there's been a concentrated effort to build our ecosystem as we move forward. I think this is a positive growth or positive path, I would say. Finally, I think the path to evidence-based medicine practice, like what Mr. Joy mentioned, may be gradual, it'll be steady, but I think it'll be there. So I once again thank to all of you, and specifically the panelists, to take out such valuable time from their busy schedule. Thank you so much, sir. Mute.
Thank you, Harishji, for your final concluding remarks. And if that is okay, thank you to all the panelists. And it has been a real pleasure speaking to all of you. So we'll get to meet you soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Have a nice evening.
Thank you. Have a